And we have speakers, Dr. Jitendra Das, Director, FORE School of Management, and panelists are Mr. Himanshu Kaushik, Director, Skill and Employment, Vision India Services, Dr. Saji Korean, Professor HR and OB of IFIM Business School, Mr. Naga Siddhartha, CHRO and Head Supply Chain of Vedantu Innovations. Anis Philip is not able to join us some of the emergency. Now may I request the panelists kindly join us on the stage. Dr. Jitendra Das, Mr. Himanshu, Dr. Saji Korean, Mr. Naga Siddhartha. Let's welcome them with a big round of applause. Now I hand over to Dr. Jitendra Das. Over to you, sir.
You all, just past noon, so it is a really few minutes past noon time. Welcome to the second session of the day, and this is on compensation and reward system. And the theme is discussion on this, what we call the intergenerational. So now, when I looked at this topic and look at the theme and how the companies have come up, and I try to pick my own mind as to how things have happened with me as I have moved around in the earlier job profiles. Today we talk of four generations in the workforce. Just to summarize, the transformers, the baby boomers, the Gen X, and the millennials. What do you call the traditionals? The traditionals are those guys who were born before, 1940s and things like that. Yeah, 45 around that time. And the rest we are all familiar. And all these four categories of generations have their own, characteristics. And now when they're in the workforce, if you have a common policy for them, then you have an issue. They may come up with some issues, some problems. And organizations, because we are in 2018, so there are situations where you have people of different age categories in the organization. So if you have a common policy, it may throw up some new challenges, which is being experienced by organizations. So therefore, there are issues as to how do we handle this kind of a thing. Now, one small story which I narrated to someone only yesterday. Is my own personal story. This is on how the intergenerational thing has been sensitive in the corporate world, not today, it's been there for long. So I started my first job with Shriram Chemicals, Kota. It's a urea and ammonia plant. So I was, as a graduate engineer trainee, I was in the urea plant. Now, the system was that you are in training for 2 years, and after 2 years, you become shift in charge. And that was the career path that was told to us. And in about 1 year's time, you get to spend a lot of time in the control room, where the shift engineers are by and large there, and they control all the production systems. There's a lot of responsibility and authority vesting with the shift engineers. In 1 year's time, you can be there and help the shift engineer and do all this. In about a year and a half, you may be given a complete charge of the shift. So when you get a complete charge of the shift engineers take a back seat and they are with you. But you are kind of, it's part of training, so you are fully in charge. And in about 2 years' time, you become in charge, and the shift engineers would be either shifted out, or this guy starts reporting to you. This is the system that we had. And we used to have these training programs, one-day training programs on various aspects. And one of the program was in growing up in the organizations. Around this it was themed. And all that we were taught was in the one-day program that, I was all of 20, 21 years of age. The shift engineers were in the mid-40s. So we were told that, these shift engineers are of twice your age, so you have to respect them all the time. When you start your career, you have to respect them. They are not as qualified as you are, because these are the people who have grown from the ranks. And they are very rich in experience and mature. They know exactly what is happening where. Your engineering would not tell you all this. You have to spend about 10 years minimum to know exactly what is where. So you have to respect them because they know. Their knowledge is humongous as compared to your knowledge as far as this plant is concerned. So the entire training was that once you become a shift engineer, once they start reporting to you, it does not mean that you are the boss of these people. You have to continue to respect. This was the theme that was given at that point of time. So there was a lot of sensitivity in the organization that was happening. And later I started after my management, I started my job in Wipro. Now, Wipro is a tech company. A tech company, they had Wipro Systems Limited and Wipro Information Technology Limited. Infotech was the computers and system was the software. So they, the CEO, the chairman, the Premji, hired these techie guys. And he also had the senior guys from the Wipro, that Vanaspati Ghee unit to do various operations. They're all in the 50s kind of people. And these guys were all in 20s, 30s, and 40s. So we used to hear that, there are some issues about these people handling the senior people. And, we were being given those kinds of training that you need to be sensitive to the senior people by age who are there. So these things have been there. But today, these matters have become much more front page thing because of the complexities of the job which are there. And what we have decided is that we have 3 learned speakers with us this afternoon to share their views on this particular theme. And if you dig information, a lot of theories and concepts are being said as to how this should be done, and a lot of case studies which are there, particularly those sectors where it is very easy to have a very senior by age employee and a youngsters working more or less the same job profile. And one job, one organization came across was the nursing sector, the nurses. You can have a nurse who is about, say, 55 years of age, and you can have a nurse who is male or female, who is just about 20, 22 years of age, and you have the same boss. So how do you handle a situation like this? How do you give compensation to those people? Because the jobs are very sensitive as far as their caregiving nature is concerned. So we have these 3 very learned speakers with us, and what we have decided is that they'll speak for about 10 to 12 minutes on their theme, and then we will have time for Q&A after that. Yeah, right. Thank you. So we can start from my right-hand side. Himanshu can talk about it. And their introduction is all there in the brochure, so we are saving some time in not giving the introduction. You can read the brochure and you'll get to know about them. Thank you. Himanshu.
So thank you so much. So good afternoon all. So this is, the context is very, very relevant in today's working environment in all the possible organizations, that we are having multi-generation working in the same premises, office or factory. And the challenge for the manager, the line function manager and the HR department is how we should design the compensation and the reward program for this multi-generation. You have people who are in their 50s working in the probably same department, and then you have also graduates or the masters coming out from the colleges who are let's say around 25 years old. And all of them have different aspiration from the job. They have different expectation from the organizations as far as their compensation and benefit goes. And that's where it is very, very important that one should, from the organization perspective, we have a different approaches to cater to their requirement. If you look at the baby boomers, the generation X and the millennial, so their requirement is very, very different. If we talk about millennial, because this is the largest workforce we have got, it is the known fact that India has got 55% population below 35. So that's where I think it is very, very dynamic and challenging field to have one platter which is fitting for all. So it has to be mix. So it is like buffet system where you can pick and choose, like what we have from the telecom companies. So they give you a basic plan, and apart from that, if you wish to top it up, you can pick and choose and pay for it. So something similar of that sort, I think, in the offering, where employee can design. So there would be a certain basic part will be there, and apart from that, the rewards and the compensation will be picked by the employees in the times to come. This is my take.
Thank you, Himanshu. One aspect which came out of here, which I have experienced, is because of the technology coming in and the way the work execution is to be changed because of the technology, there are a lot of issues that are coming up from the employee's perspective in terms of completing those tasks. Like, for example, if you have people who were born in the 50s or 60s, they were used to doing things manually, right? Now you have the technology coming in. And you tell them that, you use Word or Excel and sometimes database kind of thing, and you generate these reports. They find it really hard to do it. And even if you ask them to do some kind of training program, it's really a struggle. So you have to actually, the choices are, would you fire them? Or would you still realign them to some other kind of a task? Now, firing is not a good idea because they have been very sincere and hardworking as such. So we don't want to look at those people, they are totally incompetent, not required in the organization. You also have that, sympathy point into the organization culture. So we find it really very difficult to assign new roles to them. And the other part is the compensation, because there was discussion in the previous session on performance and compensation. Now these people, baby boomers or the Gen X who were born in the 50s or the 60s, they would not be as efficient as the millennial kids who are on the in the office, doing office work, the support system. Now these senior people have been getting their compensation with a regular increment, throughout the years. Now they would be typically at, if not twice, at least 50 to 60% higher salary than the new entrant who comes in. Typically twice the salary. Now this guy gets twice the salary and performs half the efficiency level of a new joinee. How do you justify internally as to, this is a fair compensation package? So we have had these kinds of issues and we're still struggling as to how do we handle this, because we don't want to fire them. And so they're there. And they are not saying that I don't want to be trained. It's just that they are not up to speed in terms of catching up with those kinds of programs. We did send them to training programs, but it's not shaping up that well. So I don't know, maybe some aspect on this will come up later on. Now let's have Professor Shaji to share his views, please.
So good afternoon. As a faculty, we have an obsession with the slides. So obviously, I have also put across 2-3 slides for this presentation. Well, the interesting discussion is all about the generational difference, or maybe the multi-generational workforce, and how this compensation and this rewards has to be, administered across these generations. So I'm just going to talk about few of my thoughts, what are the challenges for the organizations of corporates of current years, how we should really look at these issues. So we are in the competitive space, all the corporates are in the competitive space, right? So all what we need to have is an extra inch to see what others do not see. So maybe understanding the psychology, or maybe understanding this expectations of the people, and maybe customizing our total offering of compensation, rewards, and everything to just maybe suit your competitive advantage will give you an extra edge. That is what I wanted to just, tell all those learned, practitioners here. Just look at from that point of view, and things would be more exciting. Thank you so much for your time.
Shaji, that was a good perspective on how do you look at these intergenerational matters in the organizations. What I take from this is that we need to look at it from both the perspectives. One is from the HR perspective, that you have different 4 types of generation in the organization, and how do you develop a policy so that there is equitable distribution and the associated aspect. The other is, as a business executive, you have to deal with the people of senior generations. If you're dealing with people of a lower age, then that's okay, because if you're a senior position, someone of a younger age is reporting to you, we are humans, we are trained to handle that kind of thing, so that's okay. But the problem is when you are very young and people who are twice your age are reporting to you. So you need to be trained properly that, because of this age gap, the way you handle things in the organizational culture, values should not be dissipated in a way that it becomes counterproductive to the organization. So this is also a very important aspect that we need to look at, which is happening very commonly these days. And if you recollect, in the, when the tech boom happened after the bust, 2000 is, tech, the IT bust, and then the 2004-5 started coming up again. And that's the time, across the world, people are talking of flat organizations. Now, today we are not talking of flat organizations, but it may continue. The flat organizations reference came because a lot of these startups came where 20-year-old guy is the CEO, and this guy has a turnover of close to $1 billion, or the market capitalization of $1 billion. A lot of companies came up. And though the people said, look, there are so many people, and how do you handle this? Technology was coming in. So people were, the HR professionals essentially were saying that we have to get away from hierarchy, okay, because of the business imperative. So when there is a market situation, your organizational structure and hierarchy must be agile enough to operate like a flat organization. Like for example, if there is a customer complaint, the customer has got nothing to do with what position you are in when you are dealing with the customer complaint. So even if the CEO has to handle that problem, that guy should handle. If the service agent is handling a customer complaint, they should handle. For the customer, both the guys are the same, as long as the problem is looked at. So therefore, how do you make an organization agile enough? So technology played a very big role. So therefore, all individuals in the organization at a different age profiles may not have that capacity to transform itself into different roles in the organization. So therefore, I personally feel that the compensation, when we talk of a parity, equity in compensation, no, it's equitable compensation. You look at the competency and you pay accordingly. And therefore, what I call the market forces get into the play. In the previous session, they are saying that those programmers, those who knew more, were getting, 5 years ahead of the time in terms of compensation. Normally, they would take another 5 years to reach that level. They're learning that level today. That's happening even today. The professionals with AI and machine learning and those kinds of data analytics kind of a background are able to draw higher compensation. You cannot really talk of having the same parity across the organization irrespective of the competency level. So therefore, those variations will be there all the time. So therefore, we need to be sensitive as to how do I handle my organization where a 50-year-old is getting, let's say, 100 units of compensation and more or less similar graduation background, say BTech, MTech from whatever, and a new guy, millennial, comes in and gets a higher salary than that guy. Let's say, for example, an IT graduate, let's say Harvard Business School MBA, working in the organization for 20 years in certain position gets, let's say, 2 crores a year compensation. Millennial comes in 5 years, this guy is getting 2 crores or higher than 2 crores. So how does the senior guy take it? Now you cannot say that the millennial has to be paid less because this guy is able to do something which the senior guy is not able to do. So therefore you have to live with this kind of a disparity in a way, or paradoxical disparity, that there would be variations and we need to find answers to these questions. Because it is also said that both the people must coexist. It's like an ecosystem. The senior guy must be there, this guy has maturity, wisdom, in the opportune situation, the younger guy may not be able to come up with a solution, but this guy may be able to give you a solution, so you cannot fire this guy. And younger guy can do a lot of work which the senior guy cannot do. So therefore, they together form a ecosystem, and therefore collectively you have a strong and robust wisdom system in the organization. So therefore, it is also said that you have to have the entire village together transform itself to reach the next level. So you cannot operate individually. You cannot say that I have to fire the senior guys and only have the young guys, and you may have some new kind of a problem which may come up. So how do we handle this aspect, trying to say that there is a equitable or parity in compensation? Is a big challenge. So some of those aspects got reflected in Professor Shaji's detailing, being sensitive, being parity, being looking at customizing and things like that. But then we need to customize in a way, the moment you customize, there is a variation. Okay. So we need to live up to this. And now I would like to invite Siddharth to share his views on this, please. Yeah.
Good afternoon, and my name is Siddharth. Thank you for the opportunity. The conference chair, co-chair, and of course, close friend, mentor, and well-wisher Dhananjay ji for having me here. Lots of friends in the audience. Anand's there, and You know, it's always exciting to do something with NHRD. So I am not sure if you guys know about me. My name is Siddharth, and right now I'm the CHRO of and head supply, which is a aligned role in a company called Vedantu. We are a startup focused on education. It's a edutech startup, and our focus is that we revolutionize education. We've already started doing that. To give a quick context of the company, our YouTube channel started just 2 months ago as an experiment, and today we have 1 million unique views on them, which means 1 out of every 2 kids who's going to appear for the engineering finals is some kind of a customer for me. One last one is I've tried to start with hindsight to give you a few insights so that you can work out on the foresight piece. You can do something on this for the future. And a final story is, I'll just leave it with you. There was a doctor in Australia who was very well-intentioned. He was a good young doctor. And one day he came back to a monk he knew, and he said, I'm going to stop doing this doctor-giri, right? He said, what happened? He had lost his first patient, who was a mom of a young kid, and the father was quite a bit in trouble. And he said, listen, I tried my best to save this patient, and I couldn't. And I don't want this profession anymore. So the advice that the monk gave him is, your job is to care for your patients, it is not to cure your patients. I think if I were to achieve that shift in mindset, when I'm working with millennials at 75% of the workforce, my job is not to try and cure them, it is to care for them. I think I've cracked the puzzle, right? Thank you very much. Thank you for the extra 2 minutes, sir, and have a great day.
Thank you, Siddharth. You made us think very strongly in favor of millennials, and you were saying that by 2025, 75% of the workforce would be millennials. But then I am actually wondering that by 2025, a lot of them would actually be what we have Gen X today. So there will be a new category of millennials coming in around that time, and the whole equation gets repeated, in the same format. So they would be talking of that we are millennials, but some exennials will be defined by that time. Gen Z, yeah. So they'll be defined, and there's a lot of debate there also. So because the technology is changing very fast, so you don't know how things will happen. And the same issues will come up that, they are now outdated, a new gen is coming in, so the whole thing keeps coming up. See, one important aspect which flows from this is the way the organizations have changed themselves to adapt to the new work requirements. The way I see it is essentially because of the, what I call the driving forces in the market, or the competition that is being thrown at them. For example, if you look at Google is kind of a company who's profiled as a company who changed the workplace culture, not have a typical desk and a table, and they change the entire format. Walk into a Google office, you are not sure whether you're in a recreation center or in an office, right? Now, their job requirement of a particular kind, the smart guys figured out that, well, we need people to be thinking creatively, so they need to be in a different environment. And if I don't do this, then I would not be able to get that particular output. And they must have seen it happening somewhere. So they did that. And it worked very well. So now there's a pressure on similar companies elsewhere to do that. If you don't do that, you'll be lagging behind. So because of the pressure, companies end up changing their work practices. The millennials today, a lot of companies, I know a lot of people in the new generation, my son included, in the morning he would get up a little late and say, why you are late today in waking up? He says, I'm not going to the office today. I said, what? Are you on leave? No, I'll work from home. I decided to work from home. So he is working from home. And they have their own system. There are 2 offices in Delhi, Noida and Gurgaon. So 5 days a week, he decides where he would like to go. He says, I have to go and meet some friends. So he'll go to Gurgaon office 1 day or 2 days. 1 or 2 days, he'll decide to go to Noida office. And one day he says, I want to be with my mom and dad. So I'll stay home and do my work. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And so why do companies do it? Now there is economics behind this and there is a contentment behind this. Economics is that if you don't come to the office, the company at the very least saves on the canteen cost. You know, the food and everything is on the house, so the company saves that money. You also save on what you call the carbon footprint and energy saving, because the guy is inside, there's energy consumption and all that kind of things. And no human is pleasant all the time. Right? So this guy doesn't come to the office, so his disgruntlement quotient is also going down in the organization. So people say, well, that's fine. As long as you give me this output, which is a defined thing, I'm fine. And the technology is enabling us to do that. Now, this is with the millennials. The baby boomers are not into this. Even if you give them this option, they say, how can I sit at home and not do my office work? You know? So the organizations have to cope with these kinds of things, and things are changing, and we need to adopt the work practices in a way that on the whole, as a group with the baby boomers and the millennials together, you continue to be playing a wise game in a competitive scenario, because the competition will throw you out if you are not able to live up to the expectations. And I have been a student of marketing all along, so I'd like to see everything from the competition perspective and what you call the need and want. So now the need and want is very well defined in marketing. So the need and want for the millennials as well as the baby boomers are the same. And these two are very inherent to your being human. Need is not I need a XYZ phone, no. Need is to communicate. Need is to be staying in touch, right? Now there are different ways of fulfilling that. So the baby boomers and the millennials have the same need. The same want. Want is specific to your capacity and all that. So you must understand this, and then around this develop your compensation, reward, and all that policy, so that they stay happy. Because the happiness is different for different groups. What is a good thing, what derives a happiness to millennial, may not be a good thing for the generation. But both of them want to be happy. So if you want to define happiness and then you start working around it, you should be in a better position to find a solution than saying that let's give them 2 rupees more and everybody should feel happy. No. For example, some organizations I know, they used to give them coupons. As the company is very happy today, so you take coupons and which can be redeemed in bars, restaurants and all that. Now baby boomers are not interested in those coupons. Say, no, I don't want that coupon. What do I do with it? I have to give it to someone else. I'll not be able to consume that coupon myself. Why? Because these guys don't really want to go to a bar after office hours. So that kind of a thing is not good for them. So either you have something different or have something which is commonly applicable. So there's a whole lot of possibilities which can be explored once you delve deep inside and figure out how do I keep both all the 4 generations? I mean, the traditionalists, the 70 plus years, so they're not in the workforce as of now. The 3 generations which are there, how do you keep them happy and productive in the organization? So I would like to thank the panelists who were here to share their views on this particular theme. And we have time for questions and answers. We can take some questions from the learned audience which is sitting here. Any questions? No questions. No questions means that nobody is interested in further deliberations on this. Lunch on the mind. So, I see a hand there. Yeah, okay. Please. And please ask a question. If you want to ask, is the specific person to be
no, it's open question.
That, yeah.
My name is Dharmanandan. I am from Toyota. My question, hi Nag. Okay, a lot of speakers have been talking about millennials and a lot of generation mix in the organization. I am facing a unique situation where there is generation stagnation. And in one of the previous panels, the speaker was telling, which is also true, that comp and ben budget is fixed. So when the generation stagnation happens, that means the attritions are at lowest level. And definitely the amount that is available with me to motivate people starts becoming minimum. How to tackle this situation? Anybody can take this question. When the budgets are becoming minimum because of the, what I can say, generation stagnation. Basically, I'm facing very, very minimum attrition. How do we handle such a situation?
See, stagnation has a definition. Okay? The stagnation from the employee's perspective. From the employer perspective, we don't say stagnation. You say attrition not happening and all that. So from the employee perspective, the stagnation means it's very well defined in the government and all that. Increments not kicking in because you have maxed the scale, the traditional pay scale, you max the scale, and as long as you stay in the same scale, your compensation cannot go up. As a policy, they also say once you reach the top of the scale, you continue to get the same scale for 2 more years. After that, you stagnate. This is the definition. You cannot fire them. Public sector undertakings in India have had this problem for long. I did some consulting for Coal India a long time back. It was HR consulting where the organized structure was diamond shape. You understand diamond shape?
Yeah.
So they say, well, the diamond is the logo of the Coal India and the organized structure is also diamond shape. And a lot of stagnation happening there. So, how do you fix the problem? Now, one of the solutions they came up with, little complicated, was the golden handshake that we are familiar with. The banks have done this. So you do a golden handshake, so that people go away and you get into some other profession or job profile, and then some space is created. So once a space is created, then people down the line who would stagnate otherwise will keep moving up. This is how people have handled. The same thing can be employed in the private sector, but private sector by and large had never had this problem of stagnation as the banks and the PSUs and the government have faced. The government has this voluntary retirement scheme after 20 years. Private sector would just fire them. We are more flexible, so you fire them means, give them whatever compensation is, thank you very much, don't come from tomorrow, don't come from 30 days from now, that's it. So the private sector facing that kind of problem is, to me, very unique because you would not be into that kind of a situation. Unless and until you have an employee, typically I have seen them, who are at the lower level service people. Like, you have what do you call, in your corporate office, you have a canteen catering to the board members and high-end people. And you have the cook and the waiters and all that. They have been there for 40 years, right? And they are happy. So they are not also being paid like that, but that's okay, that's because job profile is the same. So that versus a regular executive being there for 40 years and not being productive because salary is increasing and they are not giving you that output. By and large in private, because the profit is the major driver of a lot of decisions, you fire them. You give them some forced golden handshake. So I have not come across a situation of stagnation in private sector. Yeah. Okay. So any other question? Okay. Last question there. Yeah. Yeah, last question.
Thank you. Hi. Good afternoon, respected panelists. I am Harmeet Singh from Early Salary. The question I wanted to ask you is how generous you think corporates should be, as we are talking about the millennials and all the young people coming in the organization, how generous an organization should be to fund any kind of passion what their employees want to follow. So I'm sure the corporates give reimbursements and they fund any kind of courses what they're doing. So how do you think that following of passion for an employee or a millennial is important, and how the corporates should promote or support that?
Actually, it is known in HR for a very long time, a happy employee is a productive employee. You have to maintain that happiness quotient in the organization for the employees. Also, the employee must take pride in the organization. Okay? If you take pride in the organization, you would be able to do a lot more things beyond your call of duty to ensure things are fine. And I can give an example of the public sectors in India. I think about 6-7 months back, there was a news item that one of the senior executive in ONGC died in a mountaineering expedition. It was in the news, TV and newspapers. So, and I knew some people in ONGC, so I talk to them later on. He said, no, we have this scheme where we take a group of 20, 30 people, which is volunteering. We have tiers of things. That means you cannot straight away say, I want to go to Mount Everest. No, you can't do that. You have to start with climbing a local, stone pile in your city somewhere, literally speaking. And then stage 1, and then 1 year later you go to stage 2. And third time you go to real mountaineering, and there are professionals joining with them. And they're out for a month or 2 months put together in one go. So the company is foregoing the contribution, the job output from those people for those many days so that they can go out and do something. It's their passion. And the company takes pride in this, the employees take pride in them. The other employees take pride in them. Look, my company is encouraging these kinds of things, and tomorrow I may also want to do something. The company also has a policy that if you have some such passion, please let us know. We'll find a way, if we can find a good enough traction in this, we'll initiate this. So mountaineering came because of some such initiative. You can have a music group, you can have a rock band group. These are things which is being done in the organization. So options are always open. And ONGC has a, this is what he's told me, that they have this CSR fund. So they say that, under CSR we do community thing where somewhere they put into these kinds of initiatives to keep the society happier. We do mountaineering for our employees. Employees are later, before that they're members of the society, member of the public. So we do things for the public. So that's how organizations want to do things. Yeah, thank you. So I think we have done our time. And I'd like to thank you all, the audience, for listening to us and contributing, and the panelists who have in a very learned way shared their views on this. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. What a powerful session it was. Let's give a big round of applause to all the panelists.